There are good attorneys out there. I don't want to say that all attorneys are liars and thieves.
Hi, Mr. Reed.
Whoa, hey. Did you do something to your hair?
Let's get into a few of the things that attorneys share with us that may not be completely true. And the first one is that you don't need to worry about this stuff, because if they're dealing with the probate process and things are nasty at the very end, they make more money when things are in a bad state than if things are in a good state when you pass away. And I went through this when my father passed away. He went to a prominent attorney in town and did a lot of good things to set up his estate and set up trusts, all kinds of trusts, life insurance trusts, revocable trusts, what have you. But a lot of things didn't happen when he did all this. And I want you to learn from not only his mistakes, but mistakes that we've seen a lot of people make, and a lot of the things that come about from what attorneys tell people that isn't completely true. So my name's Joe Franklin, and here at the Mustard Seed, we like to put faith with finance. And we care more about what the word says than just about anything else. But in this case, we want to protect people from a lot of the mistakes that they make when they're going through the estate planning process. What are the lies that attorneys tell us when we're going about doing estate planning, especially when we're looking to create trusts? Unfortunately, people think they're going to live forever. But what a lot of people don't recognize is that the average age of widowhood today in America is 57 years of age. So if you're already 57, you're on borrowed time. When you go to the attorney and you get all these blueprints in place, now you want to get these blueprints put in place so that you have everything you need to build the structure down the road. But that's what the attorney's for. The attorney's to put together the blueprints, kind of like an architect, to help build your estate plan. So once you see the attorney, a lot of times people think, and the lie is, that things are already finished. Things are just starting once you get these blueprints in place. So keep in mind that when the attorney gets this stuff set up for you, that the attorney makes more money if things fall apart. So if you don't go through the process of building the structure and doing everything that you need to after the fact, and things fall apart, then they get to get paid again. So we want to make sure that we put everything in place after you get these blueprints done. So a lot of times attorneys are going to tell you that you need a trust when you don't really need a trust. So let's go over all the reasons why you may not need a trust. Now, if all you've got is a piece of property to leave to your family, then you may not need a trust. It may not be enough to worry about going through all of that, because the process of getting a trust is more onerous than going through the simple probate process, because sometimes probate can be relatively simple. But there's lots of ways to avoid probate without getting a trust. So let's go through this. Anything with a beneficiary on it will avoid probate. So if you've got a 401k or you've got an IRA, any type of retirement plan, you put a beneficiary on that, that'll go directly to the beneficiary and won't have to go through probate. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that it doesn't matter what the will says, the beneficiary document always supersedes the will. If the will says something and the beneficiary document says something else, you're going to go with the beneficiary document. So if you've gotten divorced and remarried and you've redone your will, but you haven't remembered to redo your 401k beneficiary document, guess who your money's going to go to when you pass away? It'll go to the ex. So it's very important to make sure you have those beneficiaries updated, and also include contingent beneficiaries and what's called per stirpes designations, where it passes to the heirs of those beneficiaries that you have listed on those plans. Also keep in mind that you can name beneficiaries on bank accounts and regular brokerage accounts. So on a brokerage account, it's going to be called a transfer on death account. On a bank account, it's going to be called a payable on death account. You can put beneficiaries on just about everything except for property. With property, if you want to avoid probate with that, you got to put that into a trust. Now, a lot of times people will try to put somebody jointly on a piece of property or jointly on something else, and that can cause all kinds of problems. So let's talk about the problems that could cause. If you put somebody jointly on a bank account, they can take that money, they can go and do whatever they want to with it, and it may be that you're disinheriting some other family members. So you don't necessarily want to do that and disinherit other family members. Also, if you name somebody jointly on a piece of property, it can keep them from being able to benefit from a step up in cost basis when you pass away. So they're going to inherit it at the price that you paid for it. So let's say you paid $100,000 for a house and it's worth $500,000 now. If you put them joint on the house, they own it at $100,000 and you pass away. You made a gain of $400,000 on the house because you gave it to them before you passed away. They've got to pay taxes on that $400,000 gain. If you left it to them through the will or left it in a trust, then they'll inherit it at $500,000 mark, and they won't have to pay any taxes on that. So that's a key thing to remember. You can also accomplish a lot of the same things as putting somebody on there jointly on a bank account by having them as a power of attorney. They can still direct things for you if something were to happen to you, and you don't have to worry about other things happening like getting other heirs disinherited. You also don't have to worry about what happens if your son or daughter goes through a divorce and their ex-spouse comes after your money, because they can do that if they're joint on a bank account. So you got to watch out for that. Unfortunately, we come across attorneys that tell people that have simple estates that they need trusts, and tell people with more complex estates that they don't need trusts. If you've got more complexity involved in your estate, you may need a trust. So what are the times when you're going to need a trust? If you have lots of different properties, especially if they're in multiple states, you probably need a trust, because you've got to actually probate in every state where you have property, and that can be a real bear if there's lots of different states involved. So you don't want to have your heirs go to all these different states to probate things. If you have stock that's held directly, that has to go through probate also. Instead of holding it in an account, you hold directly with, say, a company that you used to work for. That's a big pain in the behind when you have to go through that. If you have lots of different things involved, business interests and whatnot, you probably want to have a trust. If you have a family member, say a child, that may not be that financially responsible, if you don't want them to blow all the money right away, you don't want them to inherit millions and blow it all right away, you probably want to have a trust and have a trustee assigned to help make sure that they don't blow it all right away. If you have a child that is married and you're afraid they might get a divorce, then you may want to have a trust to help protect those assets from your son or daughter's soon-to-be ex-spouse. Sometimes people want to protect their current spouse from people that they might marry, and they're afraid that their new spouse might take advantage of them and what they're inheriting from you. But the most common thing you want to watch out for that we see where people need trust is when people have been previously married and they're getting remarried and they have children from a previous marriage. Many times we're sitting down with a couple and they've been married before, and they want to make sure that their kids are protected in case they were to pass away. And it's almost always the case that the spouse is sharing with their husband or their wife, or I love your kids almost as much as I love my kids, and I'll definitely take care of them if something were to happen to you. But we see this time and time again, those people who pass away without trust to protect their kids, after a few years pass, guess what happens? Those beneficiaries start to change. They start to write out the kids from the previous marriage. They say, I haven't seen these people in so long. I don't keep up with them. My kids are much more deserving. They need the money much more than my ex-spouse's kids do. And the ex-spouse's kids get written out and they don't inherit anything. So that's one thing that you probably want to do, is help protect your kids so that if something were to happen to you, you take care of your spouse. He or she gets income while he or she's still living. And then when they pass away, the remainder goes to the kids. And so you protect both sets of kids in this case. So both sets of kids will inherit the funds. A lot of times attorneys will say that probate is no big deal and that it doesn't really cost that much. And I've seen situations where probate has cost tens of thousands of dollars and taken 3 or 4 years to go through. And the thing about it is, when someone passes away and the estate has to go through probate, is it gets put in the paper and people are given an opportunity to attach the estate. You may be surprised who says that you owe them money that your kids have to fight off. It may be that a bank comes out and says that you had written a note or co-signed a loan. It may be that someone says that you had a business interest with them and so you owe them money. It may be someone says that you're a long-lost relative and you're supposed to leave them money about such and such and such and such. All these things can tend to happen, especially if it's a more high-profile situation. And if it's a good bit of money, there's more chance that people are going to be coming out of the woodwork. So we want to protect from this, protect your kids, protect your heirs from having to go through this situation and have to fight off all these people, because if it's a bigger estate or if it's a more complex estate, the more things you have in there, the more moving parts, the more it's going to cost, the longer it's going to take, and the more chance that your heirs are going to have a lot of issues if they have to go through probate. So when we're doing planning for the future, a lot of times the first thing that people are thinking about is, will everything be okay when I retire? Am I going to have enough money to last? And after that, after they get that answered, then they start thinking about, am I going to be leaving things the right way to my family and my children and my spouse, and taking care of them? You want to be thinking about that a little sooner than after making sure you have enough money to last. So you want to be thinking about, what am I missing here? How serious is it if I were to pass away? How likely is that to occur? How serious is it if myself and my spouse both pass away? And how serious is it if maybe my spouse passes away before I do? Think about all the different types of contingencies that may be out there so that you're prepared. And that's what you really want to do. Sometimes these attorneys don't get you thinking about the contingencies, don't get you thinking about what happens if this and this happens or this happens. They put together something that's pretty boilerplate because that's easy. And again, if these contingencies happen, they get to get paid again. So a lot of times, as we mentioned, the attorneys do really good work in creating the blueprints for your estate plan. It may cost a lot putting together these blueprints, and a lot of times people think that they're done when they get these papers back and they signed everything. And the attorneys may say that they're done, but you're not really done. An estate plan only works to the extent you put it in place, and you've got to go through the process of making sure you have everyone assigned as the trustees and executors. And if you have trusts, you have to make sure that you fund the trust. Funding the trust is the most important step of setting up a trust. If you don't fund a trust, it's kind of like having a swimming pool and not putting any water in it. It's kind of like having blueprints for a house and never building the house. So you want to hire that contractor to build the house so that you get what you want to have. When you set this up, it's important to make sure you name the trust as beneficiary of different accounts, or set up an account as a trust account. Now, if you name the trust as a beneficiary, usually you're doing that for retirement plans and IRAs and things of that nature. If you do it right in naming the trust as a beneficiary, sometimes you can extend the life of the IRA past the 10 years that people are only allowed to keep it in force. But what you want to do is make sure to hire a contractor to help you through that process of funding everything. So not too long ago, we had a client whose father passed away, and the mother had already been placed in a memory care unit, and they were trying to figure out what to do. And luckily, we had served as the contractor for this estate, and we had all the estate planning documents in place, and we could get them all this stuff to them right away. We had it all set up on the portal online, and they were able to access this, and it was really easy for them to be able to go through this. So we had a copy of the power of attorney, and they could act right away, and we had a copy of the will and the trust and everything. And it was actually easier for them to get it from us than it was for them to get it through the attorney that set it up, because sometimes these attorneys pass away or retire or what have you. But having set that up, you want to make sure to have someone who's going to help through the process. And sometimes it's good to make sure that the family's involved in going through that process as well, and they're aware of what you've done after you set it up. Have a meeting to go through that. We'll talk about that in just a second. Also, we want to be careful about who we name as executor or who we name as a trustee, because a lot of times we've seen situations where someone's named as a trustee, say it's a brother and sister, and the brother's not very responsible and wants to spend a lot of money, and the sister's there to play policeman on the brother, and the sister isn't mean enough to be able to tell the brother, hey, you're not allowed to be spending all this money. So she just lets him continue to spend as much as he wants to, and it may get out of hand. And if that's the case, what you may consider is having a corporate trustee or a backup corporate trustee to make sure that your wishes are followed, and your son or daughter who isn't that financially responsible doesn't go crazy when they inherit the money and have the other child be the person that's having to tell them no, because sometimes it isn't easy to say no to your brother or sister that you grew up with and you love a lot, and you're just not into doing that. So you want to hire somebody who can be able to say no, who can be able to enforce the rules of the trust. And sometimes you want to, especially in Tennessee, it's easy to change trustees. Beneficiaries have a lot of rights, and so a lot of attorneys are setting up what are called trust protectors to make sure that the trustee doesn't get just changed to someone that just lets the beneficiaries do whatever they want to. So you can set up a trust protector to help protect the trust from being taken advantage of. As we mentioned, once you get everything set up, a lot of times a good practice is to have a family conference and explain to everybody in the family, hey, this is what we've done. If we were to pass away, this is where you need to go to find these things. You set up a letter of instruction, which is kind of like a treasure map, which instructs them what to do. With a lot of things, it's not easy to know where to go. It's not easy to remember all the passwords. You provide them ways to help get into the various accounts that you need to get into. You put that all into what's called a letter of instruction, but you can also have a family conference where you have your advisors involved and have your estate attorney involved and explain to them exactly what you want to have happen when something happens to you. And there's a good book on this called The Ultimate Gift. If you haven't read the book, I encourage you to read that book. We want our kids to be good stewards, and of course we want to teach them to be good stewards as much as we can while we're still living. Give them money now so we can see how they can work with it, but also we want them to be good stewards after we're gone, and hopefully we prepared them beforehand, but if we haven't quite prepared them as well as we could have beforehand, we put some structures in place. Keep in mind, the most important thing when you set up a trust is to make sure you fund the trust. And one thing that attorneys sometimes try to do is they either set up the trust through the will so that the trustee has to fund everything after the fact, or they tell you, we're going to set up this trust, but don't worry about getting these things funded. You can just do this later. You want to make sure that you fund the trust as soon as you can. You know where everything is. You know what needs to happen. We can kind of relate this to going on a trip. Let's say we're going on a trip to Puerto Rico and we forgot to pack our bags and we've been really busy. So we call our friend Sam down the street and we say, hey Sam, just go into my house. You know where everything is. Just go ahead. I left my bags on the bed. Please pack my bags for me. Meet me at the airport. So Sam meets you at the airport, gives you your bags. You fly to Puerto Rico. What are the chances you're going to have everything you need packed in your bags? Pretty slim. That's exactly what a lot of people do with their estate plan. They're leaving it up to the trustee to fund after the fact, and the bags aren't fully packed, and things are really nasty after someone passes away. But we want to make sure everything's as clean as possible and everything's done before the fact, so everything's as easy as possible for your heirs. By taking care of these things now, your spouse and your kids will be thanking you after you've gone. And since you like this video, please feel free to look at this video here and put your thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We'll catch up with you next time.